So OTAs, MetaSearch, Google Ads, is it all just a mystery or blur? Well, you're going to find out more. So Scott, if you want to come up, followed by James Lemon, who's from the GrowthWorks and also the channel strategy lead for IAG, as well as James Bishop from Siteminder, who's going to explain all the good stuff about MetaSearch. Over to you.
Thank you, Greg. All right. The marketing team asked for a picture of me yesterday, and this is all I have, so I look like the hipster teenage son of the Jameses, so here we are. So just to start things off, we have James Lemon working with IHG, and we also have James Bishop with Siteminder. As an icebreaker, James Bishop, I know you got into hospitality after a failed acting career. If you could introduce us on that way, and then introduce us to Siteminder, what you guys are doing.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, thanks for that. So, truth of it is, yeah, I did study performing arts and drama at college for a couple of years, but actually I had a great time funding myself through that, working in the hotel industry. Started, coming waiter and all the rest of it. But towards the end of college, I spent more time in the hotel than actually at college, and I realized where, I really wanted to be, and I went back into that business and did training management in college through them again. Which was an awesome experience and a great introduction to hospitality. And I've never really left it, but I did move into the hospitality technology side a few years later, mostly with PMS providers, and that's how I've ended up where I am today. So, what is Siteminder? Hopefully a lot of you guys in the room know us or use us, but we're effectively, most people see us as a channel manager. I'd say we're an online guest acquisition platform. We're helping you guys to source reservations through multiple channels, be that direct, be that through MetaSearch, be that through the OTA, wholesaler, DMCs and so on, and also supporting the direct website and supporting you guys with additional data on your hotels.
Great, thank you. And James, so you've got your own business now, the GrowthWorks, still working with IHG as well. And as an icebreaker, you did an 8,000-mile trip in a Mini, and you've got some war stories about hotels. Maybe you can share a small one and introduce your business.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So absolutely, a lot of people, I think hotel's in your blood, isn't it? I grew up in a family bed and breakfast, giving 40% margins to the local travel agency, and then had the joy of traveling 8,000 miles to Mongolia with a whole range of mafia-induced direct bookings. But as a grown-up, I spent a lot of time in consumer industries at Unilever, at IHG, at Travelport, in strategy, commercial, and operations roles, and that led me last year to Hostmaker, who run 2,500 homes for Airbnb and the home share economy. Certainly a few war scars around growing a business at breakneck speed. And so I stepped away from that last year with the insight that a lot of founders, I think, go through that same challenge on delivering on growth commitments. And hearing from the Oyos and Sonders of the world, I think we can all see that trying to balance incredibly rapid growth with sustainable operations is something that does take time and talent and expertise. So absolutely loving working with founders on their own journeys in that, particularly in travel, particularly in tech. Also brought me back to IHG, as a big hotel company constantly trying to transform and stay ahead of how do consumers want to book, but also how do hotel owners want to be looked after in the hotel industry. IHG and its competitors have two customers they've got to keep happy. Thousands of hotel owners around the world, and obviously millions of guests who they're trying to earn their loyalty. So that's been my journey this year, is trying to help IHG move that a little bit faster, and not so much reinvent, but certainly evolve the way it thinks about distribution. Move away from perhaps the battleground of OTA versus direct, moving away from constantly thinking that it's about earning that first touch point of booking and thinking more long term that actually a great stay in the real world, supported digitally, could be the way to drive engagement and actually from top of the funnel to repeat visits, there's a whole range of tactics you employ to kind of switch people from indirect to direct. But appreciate the fact that people do want to engage with a whole range of channels, book their own way, stay their own way. I think that trend's here to stay.
Nice, thank you. And so when we speak of OTAs, by now everyone has a firm understanding of what that is. When we talk about Google Ads, we have an idea what that is. Some of us maybe more application is a little fuzzy. And then there's MetaSearch, so a growing area that some people love, and in other areas a little bit fuzzy. I was wondering if first you can give us an overview of what MetaSearch is and what that application means to IHG.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, really, MetaSearch is just another top-of-the-funnel mechanism, in that key concept around consumers wanting more choices and confidence around pricing. What a fantastic tool to be out there and expose that content. I think and so it will be here to stay, just as it is in airlines, that particularly more infrequent travelers, particularly people first time to a destination, it's an absolutely legitimate way of exploring that inspiration phase of the funnel. I think where hotels have got a huge opportunity is looking at that content, looking at the way they're exposed, and realizing that right the way through that funnel, at MetaSearch, at OTAs, and then, of course, on their own site, there's a constant battle for attention. There's a constant battle for easy access for information, and frankly, a constant battle for conversion. And I think, we probably as an industry have been a little slow to realize that retailing needs to be a mindset throughout the business at the leadership table, and someone in your hotel, someone in your business has to wake up every day and think, I need to be fighting for that customer where it is my target segment, where it is part of my commercial plan. And
James Bishop, at Siteminder, how do you see the splits between these three channels? And do you see a growing trend? And if you have any numbers towards MetaSearch, what does that look like?
I don't have any numbers towards MetaSearch to share. Certainly, we know from our customer base and from all the hotels we speak to, there is a growing trend towards MetaSearch, but there's a trepidation as well. They don't know if you're getting out of the frying pan into the fire, like, which direction is this going? I think there's a huge education opportunity around, kind of looking at the whole customer journey the other way around, whereas, hoteliers tend to look at it from what am I paying for this reservation versus actually where are consumers looking to book and where are they looking to find reservations. And, we see it in our everyday life, like, I see Trivago lady everywhere. There was a period there you couldn't get on the tube without me sitting next to the Trivago lady. I think I was dreaming about her at one point. And there was a huge amount of advertising and pushing consumers towards that, which, can be very, very challenging for hoteliers to understand, well, okay, how am I going to represent myself on here? I mean, the great thing is whether you're doing it directly or not, your hotel is typically always represented by one of the channels on MetaSearch. And I think one of the key things you need to do is to make sure that you have a consistent message for your brand, whether that's independent or group or however it is, that when you are being displayed across Meta, and whether you're competing with that directly on your own through your direct booking channel, through a Meta service, or not, that actually your brand remains consistent. Because you've got better numbers on this than me, but actually the number of direct bookings that are referred from landing on an OTA through a MetaSearch, through Trivago or TripAdvisor or another, is pretty high, like 60% or 40% of those that are actually booking direct have seen your brand elsewhere. So that brand recognition piece is really important, and making sure that you're really managing the rates across your MetaSearch and getting control of those wholesalers and making sure you haven't got those crazy rates appearing on there, which can be damaging for the brand. And I think, I hope nobody's in the room, but one of the best things that happened recently was a moment went bust, right? So, everyone was really struggling with, seeing their rates up there at sort of 30% less than what they want to be selling them at, and struggling to understand how they're getting there. And I think that's a very telling story about, that was a very short-lived business model for them. There was no customer satisfaction. People were turning up to hotels and not really understanding if they have a reservation or not. So there's a lot of challenges in there. I think one of the best things is make sure that you're working directly with those channels that are advertising with you on Meta, or even better, working directly with them.
And for some small or medium-sized hotels, would you recommend bringing on a full-time person to invest in MetaSearch, or how much would you invest in this? Because there's a huge opportunity with the 20% that some of the OTAs are taking. So how would you recommend for the people out here?
Yeah, it's a great question. I suppose I throw back to this morning that if Oyo, frankly, think there's a business of going to small hotels, that is entirely, in my view, distribution-led. I think there's an argument that part of it's product-led, a little bit of refurb, a little bit of painting and LED lighting, but really the technology is the push that they're making. So if they're able to walk into hotels and say, look, for 20-25% of all of your revenues, we can just take this away from you, I think it's starting to show there must be that kind of money on the table for us to better manage this ourselves. I think that the care and attention I see in the industry for that in-lobby experience, that at-breakfast experience, we're still lacking that same energy in the distribution mix. We aren't yet seeing it as a retailing opportunity to go, you know what, I do wake up every day thinking, how can I convert my website better? Okay, I've implemented a couple of new payment options. Are they converting better? Kind of pushing back to this morning. And I think it's exactly the same on Meta. I think it's exactly the same on OTAs. Knowing who your biggest partners are, knowing who you need to pick up the phone to and just start to have a relationship with, I think is critical. So I certainly think it's got to be something you review at the leadership table, having a commercial plan and knowing that you're moving forward on some big objectives. Personally, I feel like carving out that space to have someone waking up in the morning and sweating that as a business, whether that be full-time or interim, it is an absolute must for any hotel personally. Because there's a lot to do, and it starts with things like data. Do hotels actually have the data that they need on consumers that are coming in, on the way that channels are performing, on the way that channels are costed? I would argue as an industry we're still behind. And IHG is absolutely on that journey too. We know that we can do a better job of giving our hotels performance analytics. I look at the way Booking.com is able to support our hotels, obviously with quite a narrow focus on more Booking.com business, but I think we'll actually, where can we better support owners to help them make better data-led decisions right across the mix?
Thank you. And James, so with Siteminder, as I understand it from a source that you work closely with Google on this.
So, I mean, we've been working with Google for a long time in various different segments, mostly with a lot of our enterprise clients, where we've been helping them, sort of larger groups, work with the Meta directly with Google for a long time. Google's got a lot of stuff in the pipeline. I mean, obviously, they're taking more and more share of that Meta space. I mean, everybody, from a consumer perspective, Google is the first place they go when they're searching for anything. Believe it or not, one of Booking.com's, I don't know if they're still here, but one of their biggest fights at the moment is very similar to yours as a hotelier, is they're trying to shift as much traffic direct as possible. They don't want it to go Google first. I'm looking for a hotel and then click on Booking.com. That's expensive. They'd much rather, I'm looking for a hotel, I go direct to Booking.com. So they're trying to move the traffic in that direction. Google still sees the vast majority of that traffic, and their Google offerings are getting better and more sophisticated to the point where you can actually book a hotel on Google. Yeah. It doesn't push you off to the hotel's direct booking site.
So with that said, traditionally stepped into the space as Meta, but now there's a direct booking with Google. Do you see them
still Meta, because that is still a direct reservation. You are the merchant of record. You're managing that reservation through and through. Like, Google will never get into customer service, right? They're not going to be, if someone has a problem with that reservation, that guest is phoning you guys directly. Google's literally passing the information through.
And do you see Google as a direct competitor to someone like Booking.com now?
No, not at all. I think they are a challenge for Booking.com. I think they're an opportunity for all of us here. I think Booking.com pay them, $4.4 billion in advertising. So, Google will obviously be very aware that they're a huge part of their advertising revenue, a decent chunk for a company like Google. But at the same time, they are getting more and more into travel. They started much more with flights, and hotels is an obvious next step, and experiences, I'm sure.
Great. And so other companies like TripAdvisor are doing direct bookings as well. And as I understand, they're also paying for ranking in MetaSearch. Are they playing the game in a fair way? And do you think that there's some blurred lines here of what a true MetaSearch is? Maybe you can...
I mean, we're talking a lot about blurred lines today. I think the answer's got to be yes, right? I mean, we are all in the business of growing this sector and taking as large a share of it as we can. So I think TripAdvisor will do whatever they can to grow their share of organic eyeballs, but they'll pay for that demand when they need to, and they need to be useful and funnel it to someone who'll pay the bills. That is the business of these online players. So I think let's look back to what a hotelier can do. I think let's really be convinced we've done everything we can. So 66% of the time, people will be landing on hotel-owned sites. People still have that need for confidence, that need to understand the product. It's a really important purchase where someone is laying their head for the night, or they want to have an experience. It's not just buying some batteries off Amazon. So for me, knowing that people will come to your site, are you really proud of your content? Can they get the information that they need? Are you collating your own reviews and sticking your own reviews on the site? Really simple things we can do to drive conversion. But I think the biggest mindset shift IHG is going through right now is we need to be working as hard as we can to push that content to everyone else's sites as possible. And the experts that are popping up in the B2B tech space are all saying the same thing, which is, you have to keep trying to control your content. You have to keep, doing great photography, writing great copy, and getting it out there. And last year, running a homes business, 2,500 homes, content was something we obsessed about, and realizing that an Airbnb customer wants to read something quite different to a Booking.com customer. And I suppose there's an opportunity for hotels to go, well, look, who do I really think are the customers that I'm cutting through with? Where are they finding me? And am I saying the things I want to say about my hotel? Or frankly, am I leaving it completely up to other people? Either just user-generated content that I'm in no way kind of curating, or I'll leave it up to the OTAs. I'll leave it up to the OTAs to do all of the marketing to my hotel, and I'll just pay the commission that comes through the door. And I think as hoteliers, we want to take that step, but again, we probably just aren't making that plan, resourcing that plan to go, in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time, I just have to be better at content. So what is that resource, what is that partner that's going to get me there?
Great. And so one more thought-provoking question. So over the past couple of years, two of the largest OTAs have acquired two of the largest MetaSearch companies. And at what point do you think that there's truly a still completely honest MetaSearch channel? And how much do you think the average hotelier knows about the landscape that's going on for this competitive area? It's a tricky one, but.
So, it's a tricky one. I think, two of the largest metas, actually three of them, because obviously, I don't know which two you were referring to, but Skyscanner got acquired by Ctrip as well, are owned by major OTAs. But they've also stopped investing as heavily in advertising on those OTAs, and on those meta searches. So like Booking and Expedia both, dropped their advertising spend on their own channels, basically, because they were too expensive for them, because they're trying to drive that direct traffic to their website. So I think that keeps those metas fairly honest, and they're going to have to be, with the competition that's in the market for them, coming directly from Google, and of course, there's other areas that can come from too. So I wouldn't say that they're going to be weighted back towards their own. It may look like that, but that's purely because the guys that are bidding on it have got a shit ton of money. Booking and Expedia can afford to put themselves at the top exactly where they want to be, and they've got great amount of data to know when and how much and for where and for when they need to bid.
And James Lemon, so is there any strategies out there that is applicable to different periods of time. So your occupancy is at 50%. You should be through this channel, and dial into different levers as it gets closer to the expiration period, if you will. Is there any strategies that you've advised or know of, or have any recommendations of how they should turn on certain assets at different times?
Yeah, this is something we talk about a lot, actually, and I think it all starts with start looking at your own data, right? Actually, do we really have a strong sense of what's going on today? We can talk about dream segments all we want, right? Hey, is there a sweet spot of people booking a year ahead for your particular hotel? Or do we need to have this race for base business? Or actually, is it all last minute now? But start with your own hotel. Do you know your data around your highest paying customers, or customers who have repeat business? Or frankly, customers, if you're looking at total revenue management, who are just more likely to spend in the hotel? I think really starting with who are we appealing to today and who are we winning to today is the key thing. I think after that, there are absolutely levers that you can play. And I think part of it is a mindset shift of, if I look at OTAs, I think that the big chains certainly have an OTA value proposition question mark, which is, are we still relevant in our direct channels if I've got a lot of OTA business? But I think there are a lot of situations where that OTA business booked 6 months out, 9 months out, 12 months out, is some of your highest rated business. And even if you're knocking off 15 to 18% commission, it's still really valuable. Similarly, in high leisure destinations, some of our resorts, we just know that booking window is earlier. But again, we're lucky because we get a lot of data, but people should know that about their own hotels. I think the area we haven't spoken about is corporate. And again, I think there's a mindset that I'll open up my access to the GDS and I will just let that business come. But the journey's got to be, how do I obsess about that content and that conversion for that particular segment just as much as I do about my direct channels, or just as much as we're all talking about the world of Meta and OTA. Some of those avenues are the route to strong midweek business, to strong repeat stayers, people who are perhaps less price sensitive and will be spending in the meeting space or F&B in the hotel. And then once you've thought about the segments, then it goes back to channels. And actually, the OTAs now are some of the strongest players in these kind of small, medium business kind of corporate booking tools. And then there's the giants of the Concur in the world. But I think you've just got to start with knowing yourself, knowing what data do you have, what plan do you want to make, and then following through on that.
Great. And we're already running short on time here. As some recommendations as an immediate step for maybe some people in the room, I'd like to maybe get your opinion. So from Mews, we work with whip.io and My Hotel Shop. Good recommendations for people to get into MetaSearch, as well as we advise some people to just sign up with some of these people, make sure that they have control over the data and that they're part of the experience, because not every hotel is aware. Do you have any quick tips that you might recommend as a first step after you leave today?
Yeah. First thing, I would make sure you just understand where you're being and who's advertising you on MetaSearch. And as we said at the very beginning, make sure that you're being represented exactly how you want to be. Have you got the right rates up there? Is it the right images? Because these images can come from a lot of places. And are you being sold correctly? Is that how your brand should be able to be represented? And then, look, if you're looking into how do you want to play directly on the MetaSearch, then yeah, there's plenty of providers. We do a little bit. You've mentioned a couple. Most of Meta, to be honest, and or I've cocked up in the past, should really be driven out of the direct booking channel, right? Because they should be coming through as a direct booking. So it should be part and parcel with that direct strategy. One of the things I would say is, look, if you're willing to pay 15-18% for booking through an OTA or a third party, there's no reason why you wouldn't be paying the same for a direct. The cost of acquisition differential is not that great when you put into like, how much is it going to cost me to get these? Now that we're in this world where we have this consumer behavior where everything is online, and as consumers we are now molded into this habit of how we book our rooms. It does become more and more expensive, the cost of acquisition of each guest. So the cost of Meta is maybe not that much different from what the cost of acquisition is from other channels, But of course, then you own that guest. It's a direct relationship, and then it's your role to make sure that they're coming back directly each time. And that goes for all your guests, obviously.
Thanks. Just to keep things going, we have a couple questions, and I want to make sure that we have time. This first one actually might be back for you again. So, from George, we're using Siteminder, but Siteminder doesn't yet support MetaSearch and book on Google yet. Am I wrong? When are you planning to support it?
Hi, George. Thanks for the question. Look, it's something we can catch up. Look, we support Meta through various connectivities that we have, whether it's through a partner, whether it's through some direct products. It really does depend on the market and where that product sits. But myself, Corentin's at the back, he's around, Alethia's around. We can all talk about that. It really does depend on the hotel and the market that we're looking at, what we're exactly doing. But there is a lot more to come through that Meta in the future. I can say we've launched multiple Meta programs, right? So we can do TripAdvisor, instant booking, TripAdvisor, cost per click, right? Do you get many reservations from them? TripAdvisor aren't here, aren't they? No, not really. So there's lots of options to look at and explore.
Nice. And for James Lemon, so have you seen an impact from the downfall of old style TA Thomas Cook, an additional pickup through, I lost it here, direct bookings? Pick up through modern channels, yeah.
Yeah, that's a question that would be great for some of my colleagues who are more close to the day-to-day performance. I mean, ultimately, at the leadership table that I'm sitting at, no, that's not something we're discussing hugely. I think it's partly, IHG, particularly in Europe, doesn't have a lot of those kind of resorts, longer stay leisure properties. We are typically more city centre, short breaks. Obviously, almost 50% of our business is corporate, so not a huge amount of Thomas Cook bookings for us. Obviously, on a more practical level, which we try and support, we do a lot around relocation programs and emergency assistant, and people being, obviously the business in our airport hotels picks up dramatically directly in situations like that, but obviously we do everything we can to support.
Okay, and there's another question for you. So IHG, do you see your new attribute-based pricing model as an opportunity to optimize, it keeps moving on me, optimize your channel mix and drive more direct bookings, so attribute-based pricing?
Yes. Ultimately, I think the way that obviously a huge multi-year investment in Amadeus, so that we can start now to do the kind of what do you call it, ancillary sales, upsells, debundling that we were talking about earlier this morning. I think that will become part of the industry more and more. But I think it has to be in line with what the guest wants. So I think it's about, for certain target segments, it's about being able to offer a more basic product, but equally people need to be able to know that they can get tailored bundles. But I think it comes back to content, and I think we're thinking content before pricing, which is actually just giving people the chance to select a room and have more confidence in exactly what experience they're going to get. Moving from generic pictures of a standard double to the exact room and view that you're going to get, that's more where the play is, and that's what will shift people to direct. But I can also see typically a trickle-down effect, where you might start with, look, your very loyal guests start to get particular benefits, but just like something like free Wi-Fi, you might protect that for your loyalists, then you might just protect it for direct. But I can absolutely see a place 3, 4, 5 years from now that people, whatever channel they book in, luxury travel agencies, OTAs, they also deserve a great guest experience. So just like if I book on a BA or book a Disney trip for a travel agency, that brand steps in after the moment of booking and says, look, help us tailor your stay and have an amazing time. Hoteliers have exactly the same responsibility. So that ancillary, I think, long-term won't be protected for direct booking, but the engagement is what matters, and that will say, hopefully, direct.
Great, thanks. And James Bishop, so looking for a very polarizing answer on this as a stance. Should hotels undercut OTAs through MetaSearch? Yes or no?
It's up to, individual hotel strategy. I think actually James has got probably a better answer on it, having worked in that revenue management piece. But obviously it's going to depend on your agreement and your market, and it changes by one. But personally, I don't see why you shouldn't have a better value offering of your direct. Whether that means it displays the same price or not is another thing, but I think have a better value offering for direct through Metas. rather than maybe say, let's call it an undercutting, but actually highlight that your direct guests are, as we were saying, like additional ancillary options. Obviously, free Wi-Fi, one that most people are probably hopefully doing, but I'm sure there's other great things you can offer to the people who are booking direct.
Great. Thank you both. That was very helpful. And thanks, Siteminder and IHG. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.